Okay, so welcome everybody. So we're taking another Memorial Day holiday with the Buddha, who's a very good travel companion. Yeah. And let's enjoy the time that we spend with the Buddha this weekend. So in the previous Memorial Day retreats, for many, many years, it feels like since time without beginning, we were working through Jeffrey Hopkins' book and His Holiness's book called How to See Yourself as You Really Are. And we finally finished that last year. And so people this year requested that I teach good karma, how to create the causes of happiness and avoid the causes of suffering. So that's this book. And so that's the book that we're going to go through from now, maybe until enlightenment. Teaching from a book is different than just teaching on a subject, because when I teach from a book, I will read from the book and then I'll give some commentary. And this is very much how the Tibetan teachers teach. They always have a text and they'll read the text and then give a commentary on the text. So that's what I'll do here. So our text is the Good Karma book, but it has a subtext in it, which, because it's a commentary on Dhammarakshita's short, I guess you could call it a poem, called The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. And so we will go through his poem and the verses. It explains the verses. And then the book has an introduction that talks about the general worldview for Buddhists. And we'll go through that this weekend, because this is actually the foundation. If you want to understand the rest of the text, then it makes much more sense if you have the Buddhist worldview. Yeah. So if you want to get the book, I think it's quite helpful. You can read ahead. That helps you already start thinking about the material before you hear the teaching on it. And then afterwards, it helps you have, it becomes like a meditation guide, especially in a text like this where you have verses and then commentary. So the verse kind of is like the synopsis of the main point, and then you can read that verse after you've heard the commentary, and then do your Lam-rim style checking meditation based on the commentary that you've heard. So you do the same kind of analytic checking meditation that you do with the Lam-rim topics, but here you would read the verse first, and then what you can also do is make an outline of the major points that talked about, the major points explained in the verse. Okay. So that's what we'll do. The book is published by Shambhala, so you can get it on Amazon and wherever else, at Shambhala's website too. Okay, the author is this one. But the real author is Dhammarakshita, who wrote the poem that this is a commentary on. Okay. And Dhammarakshita, very little is known about him. Yeah. He was an Indian sage. Some say that he was a Vaibhashika or Vaibhashika. Others say that he was a Bodhisattva abbot. Having read this text, I think he must have been the Bodhisattva abbot, because this text is very clearly a text that talks about the benefits of cherishing others and the disadvantages of the self-centered mind. Yeah, very clearly is in that Chandra. But, unfortunately, we don't know much about him. He was, however, one of Atisha's teachers. So if Atisha, who brought the second wave of Buddhism to Tibet, was a student of Dharma-Rakshita, then he must have been a very good teacher, because students often take after their teacher. Not all the time, but in Atisha's case, he had very good teachers, and then he taught from what he learned from them. These verses are verses that require a lot of thought on our part. Yeah. And so often when asking questions, we want more information, but the real answers to the questions come when we think about the material ourselves. Okay. Because we can repeat the words of the answer that we heard, but understanding what those words mean is a different story. And even having understood the words, putting them into practice also is a different story. So those last two really depend on us putting the effort in. Okay, so before we do the verses, to start, we spend a minute generating the visualization, because we don't chant to empty space. Yeah, when we're chanting, we're trying to make a connection with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so to do that, it's very helpful to visualize them. It's kind of like when you write a letter to somebody, you think of that person, you have a mental image of them in your mind, and you write the letter expressing yourself. So similarly, when we chant, we do a visualization, we have that mental image in our mind, and then we say the words of the recitation that were written to help guide our mind to generate virtuous attitudes and perspectives. So think of the Buddha surrounded by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all of them looking at you with acceptance and kindness. And then think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. As far as space. And that as we turn to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for spiritual refuge, we're thinking that all the other sentient beings are doing that together with us, and we're leading them. So it's helpful to include, if there's people you have trouble with, if there's things going on in the world that are upsetting to you, include all those people in your visualization and think that they are also taking refuge in the three jewels, and then that they too are generating bodhicitta. And let's generate our motivation. So all of us want happiness and not suffering. And we're very confused. The whole world is confused about what is the cause of happiness and what is the cause of suffering. And this comes down to the state of our mind. What is going on in our mind? Our views, our attitudes, our emotions, and the actions that these mental states inspire. So we're going to do an examination of good karma now. Karma means action, and it can refer to mental, verbal, physical actions. And our karma influences whether we experience happiness or suffering. But the actions or karmas that we create originate in the mind. So we're going to explore what are virtuous and non-virtuous, wholesome and unwholesome states of mind, and the actions they produce. And one of the most virtuous states of mind to have to create good karma is the bodhicitta, the mind aspiring for full awakening in order to benefit each and every sentient being. So thinking with an attitude of kindness and acceptance yourself towards other beings, then generate that bodhicitta intention for participating in the retreat this weekend and for living our life in general. Is ocean waves. Big ones. Okay. And sometimes in our life it feels like there's waves crashing on us. And sometimes we feel like we are just floating along on the crest of the waves. Very different experiences with waves. So I think that's a good symbol for when we talk about karma. Because when we put our hearts and minds in the direction of creating virtue, it creates the cause for happiness, like riding on the crest of the waves. And when we put our heart and mind in lots of self-centered thoughts and wrong views, then we create harmful actions, and that manifests in our life like waves are crashing down on top of us. But waves are impermanent, aren't they? Whether you ride them, whether they're coming on top of you, the whole situation is not fixed, stable, predetermined and lasting forever. It's something that is changing all the time. Okay, so when we talk about karma, we're talking about cause and effect. Cause and effect mean change, because the cause has to cease for the effect to arise, and then that effect too ceases and becomes the cause for something else. So the subtitle is How to Create the Causes of Happiness and Avoid the Causes of Suffering. So that's very essential information to know. Now, we think we know that already. Okay, now I learned in my family and in society that money was the cause of happiness. And the more money I have, the more secure I am, the more people respect me, the more I am loved, the freer I am to do what I want. So money is really the key to social status, to choice, to honor and respect and pleasure. That's what we're taught, isn't it? Yeah. Now, is that true? Okay, we were taught that, and we imbibed it when we were little. But is it true? Mm-hmm. Now, we were also taught that other things were the cause of happiness. Okay? A relationship was a cause of happiness. Family is the cause of happiness. A good job is the cause of happiness. A nice car is the cause of happiness. A boat, a vacation home, going on traveling trips around the world and staying at 5-star hotels, or somewhere else if you prefer that. But what we've learned is that the cause of happiness always lies external to us, which means that we need to get all the causes of happiness from outside of ourselves and hang on to them as much as we can and push away the causes of suffering, which also lie outside of ourselves. Okay, and so that's how we've been living our lives. But is anybody perfectly happy and free from all misery? No. And if you think money is really going to bring you the utmost happiness, as it appears to, well, we just received the news a week or two ago that Bill and Melinda Gates are divorcing. So they have plenty of money, but it wasn't bringing the happiness that they wanted. And they had a good relationship, so it appeared to the world, but that didn't cut it either. And they had the nice house, unlike Washington. Yeah, and I'm sure they had other houses and boats and different things. And that also, now they have to divide it up. So all that stuff is going to become the cause of headaches as you figure out who gets what, and is it going to be divided equally, whatever equally means. Okay, so if we just check out what we've learned and as kids from family and society and ask ourselves, is it true? And look around the world and see if it's true, we'll see that a lot of the things that we learned don't cut it. Yeah, they don't produce the result that we were told that they would. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when the subtext is how to create the causes of happiness, or the subtitle, how to create the causes of happiness and avoid the causes of suffering, this is a topic that is of interest to us because what we've learned so far hasn't worked. Yeah. Or maybe it worked for a little while, but it certainly didn't work forever, did it? Because if it worked forever, you wouldn't be here attending this retreat. You would be off doing whatever it is that was supposed to make you everlastingly happy, but it didn't. And so you came here as an alternative to learn another way to be happy. Okay, so the text by Dharma Rakshita will give us a lot to think about that way. Yeah. So we'll begin the book. The first is generating our motivation. And actually the title of that is Sick as a Dog. Okay. Did you have that expression at home? Yeah, I had it when somebody would say, "Oh, I'm sick as a dog." I think sometimes we're sicker than dogs. Yeah, not all the dogs are sick. Okay, so I wrote the first part here. So it says, I have a special connection with this poem, The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. It impacted my life in a strong but unexpected way. So in 1976, I was living at Kopan Monastery outside of Kathmandu, Nepal, where, as someone new to the Dharma, I was studying and practicing the Dharma. So, the conditions were rudimentary, but we were all young and we were just so happy to be there, that it was fine. The food was definitely rudimentary, but it was far better than what the little Sherpa boys who were monks at the monastery, what they ate. Because for dinner, they got some broth and a piece of bread. But the Ingis, the Westerners, for dinner, we got a piece of bread and a scoop of peanut butter. Peanut butter. That was a luxury. Okay. So, and then you'll hear more about the accommodations as we go on here. Okay, so I was living at Kopan. I became sick and weak. My skin turned yellowish, and anger percolated inside of me. I was getting quite angry. I had contracted hepatitis A, which affects your liver, and the liver is connected with anger. Yeah. So Hep A is a disease that Western medicine has no cure for, at least not then. I don't think now either. Hep A is the kind of hepatitis you get when the food you eat is not prepared, is not washed properly, or someone, spits in it, or who knows what's going on. And our food was cooked. There was one Nepali man who was the cook. He was really nice. And all the little boys in the monastery, who had grown up in the Sherpa area, up in the mountains near Mount Everest. They didn't know anything about sanitation. Well, we'll get onto the toilet facilities. It comes in the chapter, but you'll see sanitation was not the foremost thing on the mind, or the foremost object of education there. So a lot of people got sick, but I got Hep A. So the illness totally knocked me out physically and mentally. And my bad mood was accentuated because Hep A affects the liver, which, according to Tibetan medicine, is related to the element of bile and the defilement of anger. So some friends kindly took me to Kathmandu to see a homeopathic doctor who prescribed some medicine, because we all knew that Western medicine didn't do any good and homeopathic was supposed to be better. So they took me down to town. Kapan is on a hill. We had to go down to Bodhanath and then take a taxi. Oh, taxis in Nepal at that time were great. Remember years ago, people used to see how many people you could fit in a phone booth? You know, that was a big thing. Well, in Nepal, at that time, it was how many people can you fit in a taxi or a minibus? And you were like jammed together. You could not move. Okay, so you're so sick. Thank goodness there were so many people around me. Otherwise, I might have fallen over, but I couldn't because I couldn't move. Okay, so my friends took me to the doctor, got some medicine. On the return trip to Kopan, okay, in those days, it was very difficult to find a taxi to take you up the hill. And there weren't many taxis or cars then. Okay, this was 1976. So I was too weak to walk. So one of my friends carried me on his back up the hill. I am eternally grateful to him. Okay, so we finally made it up the hill. Taxis were few and far between in those days. And in any case, I couldn't afford to take one. I had very little money. Okay, so at the time, I stayed in a dormitory where this sounds so nice to read it, you know, I have this incredible image in my mind, where the floor was made of irregularly spaced wooden planks. That is putting it in a nice, polite way, okay? So the floor, the whole building was made out of wood. There was no ceiling on the floor below you. Your floor was the ceiling of the floor below you. And the floor was just planks, and there were spaces between the planks. So when you swept your floor, your neighbor got all the dirt downstairs. And when your neighbor upstairs swept the floor, you got all their dirt. Okay? Yeah, and instead of toilets, there were outhouses. Okay, so I won't read this. I'll just tell you what it was like. So the outhouses, you had to go from the dormitory, which was called Norbalinka after His Holiness's summer residence in Tibet. But it wasn't like His Holiness's summer residence. You had to walk down the steps and then go on a little path to the outhouses. The outhouses were big ditches in the ground with grass mats on either side. That was your privacy. One grass mat in front, that one you could open and close, you could get in. And to avoid falling in the pits, there were two planks laid across the pits. Okay, you got the picture? Yeah, so you have this big pit, two planks, and you go in and you have to know exactly where those planks are. Because if you miss the planks, you're going to fall right in the outhouse. So you put your feet there, you crouch down, you do your business, you get up, yeah, and then you find your way out. And there are no lights there at nighttime. Okay. So, so I was so sick that walking from my room to the outhouse, it felt like climbing Mount Everest to me. I was like panting and I had to stop and lean against something and so, the hep just knocked me out. So all day long I was lying in the room, on the wooden planks. I think I had a grass mat between me and the wooden planks. Yeah. Okay, so while in my sickbed, somebody brought me a little booklet that was published by the library in Dharamsala, and it was called The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. Okay, so this is the Tibetan Library of Works and Archives in Dharamsala. And I had enough strength to turn the pages. That was it. I couldn't even sit up to read the book. So verse 9 in the book stopped me in my tracks. I went. Verse 9 said, okay, and here Shantarakshita he's talking like Shantideva, talking to himself. So he says, when my body falls prey to unbearable illnesses, it is the wheel of destructive karma returning on me for injuring the bodies of others. From now on, I will take all sickness upon myself. And I went, oh, when my body falls prey to unbearable illnesses, that was my state. It is the wheel of destructive karma returning on me for injuring the body of others. What should I do? From now on, I will take all sickness upon myself. So until that moment, I had blamed my illness and its attendant discomfort on the cook, who had not cleaned the vegetables thoroughly, and on the kitchen helpers, the little monks, who had not washed the dishes well. Now, Dharmarakshita was telling me that my experience was the result of my own actions. Okay, I couldn't blame the cook and the little monks. I couldn't blame Kopan Monastery for not having luxury dormitories and a fantastically clean kitchen. They cooked over a wooden stove. Actually, it was clay, it was a clay stove and you put wood inside. Okay. So I couldn't blame anybody else. Looking at it from a karmic viewpoint, I saw that the sickness was rooted in my own actions, probably created in previous lives of harming others. Or perhaps the karma was created when, as a young child, okay, another true confession, I piled up all the snails in the garden and stomped on them with glee, mistakenly thinking I was doing something good by ridding the garden of these pests. And I thought my parents would be so happy. So I made big piles of these snails and stomp them out. Or perhaps it was due to swatting flies in the summer, another activity I took great delight in as a child, when you could catch the flies and sneak up behind them and just go away before they could fly away. Okay. So I was taught that all these things were good. We should rid the world of these kind of troubling insects. That my misery was due to my own actions doesn't mean I deserve to suffer. Karma is not a ticket to punishment. Okay, so this is a wrong belief that many people have. And I think that they have it, at least Westerner people have it, because they're bringing Christian ideas into Buddhism. Yeah, because often it's presented in Christianity and in other religions too, that if you do harm, you are punished by God. And if you do good, you are rewarded by God. Okay? So often, I did some hospice training once, and they dealt with this in, that you will deal with people who are dying who think that their illness and their ensuing death are a punishment from God, and how that puts them in so much spiritual turmoil because they want to take refuge in God, but God is the one who's punishing them. And then also they say, I deserve to suffer because I was a bad person. And then look how corrupt I am, how bad I am, da, 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 da. Okay, so can be all of that going on in somebody's mind while they're dying, and it's not very helpful. Okay, so, that my misery was due to my own actions doesn't mean I deserve to suffer. Karma is not a ticket to punishment. Rather, it meant I could no longer blame my misery on others. Darn it. It's so much nicer to blame our troubles and our unhappiness on other people, isn't it? It's why am I unhappy? Oh, my parents this, my cat this, my kids that, my boss the other thing, and the government, especially one political party. Oh, they're really the cause of my unhappiness. So I hate all those people, and I wish the whole world were different. And yet I can't change it. So I'm just really miserable. This is, how many people feel nowadays, this sense of despair, helplessness. The problems facing the world are too huge for any of us to deal with. Okay. Plus, we're victims of what other people do. So we think, if only other people would change, then my world would be wonderful. But they have to change. Yeah. I might have to do a little bit, but it's mostly other people who have to change. Yeah. Like taking care of the climate. Yeah. It's other people who have to stop polluting. Yeah. The fact that I take long road trips, that's just making me happy that I'm not responsible for climate change. But all these other people, who drive on long trips and the factories and so on, they're polluting the world. Yeah. So this is how we always frame situations, isn't it? We frame it in two ways. One is I'm the innocent victim who does my best, tries to do everything right, and people mistreat me. Or they take advantage of me, or they don't respect me, and I suffer. So either that one, or second one is I am so bad and so corrupt and so full of shame from, I don't even know why, but I'm just full of shame that everything that is wrong in the world is somehow due to me because I screwed up. Yeah. So we're either the most innocent or we are the most corrupt, who is responsible for everything that goes wrong in our lives. Okay, so if we can't be the best, we're going to be the worst, but we are special. Okay. So but this is not how karma works. Okay. Karma is not a reward. It's not a punishment. It's simply results of the actions we do. So whatever I had done to others was now coming back to me And I had to take responsibility for my previous actions, even if I couldn't remember them because I did them in a previous life, or I didn't know specifically which destructive actions were now ripening as my suffering. We don't always know that. We don't have a table to consult with a list of all of our negative actions and a star behind the one that is now ripening as our misery. It's not like that. So actually, knowing all that details didn't matter because, for me, because I knew I certainly had not been an angel. Yeah. The Wheel of Sharp Weapons, as I read it, and the verses often talk about destructive actions we've done, harmful intentions we've had. And when I read those, it was like, yeah, I'm very familiar with this. This is talking about my mind. Okay, so the Wheel of Sharp Weapons made it clear to me that karma is like a boomerang. Whatever actions we do return and have a similar effect upon us. Okay, but darn it, that doesn't seem fair. Yeah, because other people harm me, so I should be able to harm them as much as I want to, because my suffering is due to them. So I should be able to harm them back, and it should be karma-free. But now, this book is telling me, Dharma Rakshita is telling me, that when I harm others, that's going to cause a similar kind of action to come back on me. And I'm going to receive harm similar to what I dished out to other people. But that's not fair. Fair is when I get to take revenge. Okay. Experiencing the results of my own actions is not fair. Okay. Does your mind think that way sometimes? Yeah? So you can see how we hold on to quite distorted views. And I know it like none of us like being criticized. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of good at criticism, complaining. I have a PhD in complaining and a master's in criticism. I'm working on my PhD in criticism. Okay, but I already have it in complaining. Yeah, very, very expert complainer. So, in working on my PhD for criticism, I practice criticizing people as much as possible because they actually deserve it, right? Yeah. So when I criticize you, you deserve it. It has nothing to do with my exaggeration, nothing to do with my interpretation. You are doing something wrong, and you need to correct it immediately. Okay? Now, what was my point in saying that, besides telling you that you were totally wrong about everything? Okay. So, accepting the fact that if I give out criticism, why am I so puzzled when other people criticize me? Yeah. It's my distorted concepts. We were talking about wrong views last night. Yeah, my wrong views is I should be able to criticize others because they did something bad. But nobody should criticize me because because first of all, I don't make mistakes. Second of all, if I do, I was trying my best. I was doing my best. And the reason the other person is unhappy is because they are being too sensitive. Yeah, so it has nothing to do with me. So they should not criticize me for all the mistakes that they think I made that I didn't really make. Right? Right? You're acting like you don't believe me. Good, now none of you can criticize me because you believed what I said. But do you believe it when it's talking about you? That you don't make mistakes. And even if you do, you're doing your best and you meant well. And so people should give you a break and not take out their frustration with you at all. Yeah? But when I read The Wheel of Sharp Weapons and started thinking about it, I thought, I usually manage to criticize a few people every day. Yeah, it's after all, I'm working for my degree in criticizing. So I practice it very regularly every day. But I don't get criticized by other people every day. I criticize much more than I am criticized. So that's not fair, actually. So even though I don't like getting criticized, if I look at the numbers, I'm still getting the better deal because I'm dishing it out more than I'm getting it. Okay. So that means actually that there's the potential for me to get criticized much more than I already am, because I have certainly planted the seeds in the garden for the weeds of criticism to grow. So it's puzzling that I'm so surprised when I get criticism. And I shouldn't be surprised. I should be surprised that I get so little criticism, considering how much I give to other people. Okay, so karma is like a boomerang. Whatever actions we do return and have a similar effect on us. That moment was a turning point in my Dharma practice. Previously, I had thought, Dharma is nice, I should practice it. Yeah, Dharma makes sense, I should practice it. Should, that word, how we should ourselves. But I was lazy in doing so. Seeing that my miserable experiences were the results of my own actions, which could be traced back to my ignorance, my anger, my clinging attachment. When I began to see that, then I now wanted to practice the Dharma. So instead of thinking I should practice it, I wanted to practice it. Yeah, so that was a big switch in my mind, from should to want to. Because should, I don't know about you, but should is should, and I'll get around to it sometime in the future, but not now. Want to means it's going to be a priority. I'm going to do it now because I see benefit. So the difference between should and want is enormous. The latter is supported by wisdom. The other is a limp obligation. Looking back on having hepatitis, I am grateful for the experience of being sick because it dramatically changed my approach to life and to Dharma practice. It got me going on the right path, a path that is still benefiting me and others many decades later. Okay, so Hep A was really, it was a big turning point in my practice. Yeah, And I'm very glad I have it. And, there's some people, when they experience difficulty, they learn a lot and they can see the benefit in going through the difficulties that they had. One time I was asked to speak in a wellness group with a bunch of people who were recovering at various stages of recovering or trying to recover from cancer. And I remember one woman at the group, a very nicely dressed woman with her hair done from a beauty shop, saying that the experience of having cancer really changed her life and made her appreciate things in her life and people in her life that she hadn't appreciated before. So within difficulties, depending if we shift our attitude, we can find things that are of benefit. So in the middle of my recovery from hepatitis, while I was still very weak, the Nepali government decided that it was time for all the foreigners at Kopan to leave, and they stopped extending our visas. So this was in May or June of 1976. What was that, 45 years ago? Yeah. Just before the monsoon rains, which is the hottest and muggiest month of the entire year. It was not the time anybody in their right mind wanted to travel overland from Kathmandu to Dharamsala, India, a several-day journey in buses on winding roads and trains packed with people. Okay, I was a monastic wannabe, not a nun then, but nevertheless, the monastic community of Westerners took me under their wing as we schlepped up and down mountains and across plains, and again up mountains to arrive in Dharamsala, where we could continue our study and practice of the Dharma with compassionate and wise Tibetan spiritual mentors. So in the pre-monsoon heat, if you've ever been in India and Nepal, but especially India, pre-monsoon, it is so hot that you can fry an egg on the hood of a car. Seriously, it is so hot. And you're packed in these buses and on these trains, with HEP. So the kindness that others gave me then was another real-life Dharma teaching. It made me wonder what I possibly could have done in previous lives that created the cause for this. Because here were all these people, the Western Sangha, they didn't know me so well. And yet I traveled with them and they took care of me as, we went up and down the hills and across the plains and into Dharamsala. Okay, so why did I think about what I must have done in previous lives? Because now alert to the machinations of my self-centered thought, due to having read The Wheel of Sharp Weapons, I was aware that in this life I had not created such causes. To receive kindness like I received, I had not done any actions up to that would create the causes to receive that kind of kindness. I had, grown up just expecting kindness, expecting things. So experiencing the kindness of others in this way fortified my confidence in the wisdom of Dharmarakshita's message to dance and trample on the head of the betrayer of self-centeredness and self-grasping ignorance, and to cherish others and take delight in benefiting them whenever possible. Okay, because I realized, I was experiencing all this kindness, And I hadn't done anything in my life to create the causes, the karmic causes for it. So I realized, hey, I need to start changing, because if I want to experience help and kindness in the future, I better start creating the causes for it now. Okay, so now the section on motivation. To fully benefit from reading a Dharma book, I'll save that for tomorrow morning's meditation. Okay, let's start with the first chapter. Well, actually, it's chapter 2. So chapter 2 is the world we swim in, the Buddhist Worldview. So before delving into the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, it is first helpful to have a brief explanation of our current situation of life in cyclic existence. The self-grasping ignorance and self-centered thoughts that fuel our difficulties, liberation and full awakening as desirable states of mind, states of peace, and the Buddhist path that transforms our mind into those states. So these topics that I just listed form the context for the teachings of the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. So from our usual perspective, we see ourselves as real individuals with our own unique essence. So we're not only persons, real persons, but we are also individuals with our own unique essence, self or soul, something that is really me. Okay? Everyone and everything around us appear to be objectively real, existing from its own side, independent of everything else. This is the view of self-grasping ignorance. While people and things are fluid, changing, and dependent on other factors, ignorance confines them to being solid, independent, objective things out there. Yeah, everything I perceive exists under its own power out there, and I just happen to come across it and interact with it. But it exists, how it appears to me, is it exists as something totally separate from my mind. It's objective out there, nothing related to my mind. Okay, nothing related to anything else either. They're just these objective people out there. And they each have a personality, and I know their personality, and they are always like that. So the people I like are always nice, and the people I don't like are always terrible, until the people I like are mean and the people that I don't like become nice. But then they become always the other trait that they didn't have before. Mm-hmm. So meanwhile, the self-centered thought thinks, I'm the most important one in the world. Everything should be the way I want it to be. Do you have that assumption? I am the most important one, and I am wise, and I know how the world should be organized, and everything should be the way I want it to be. And then I will be happy. From this perspective, our task then becomes to navigate our way through the external world so that we will encounter what gives us pleasure and avoid all that causes us pain. Security, comfort, and success are of greatest importance. Okay, so we shouldn't have any insecurity, any discomfort, yeah? And when we experience that, it's, again, life being unfair to us. So we've got to leave where we were and go to another place or undoubtedly things will be better. Or you leave your present partner and go find another one who undoubtedly would be better. In the context, people come to the Abbey, and then you come here and you think, oh, I'm going to a monastery. I'm going to be a spiritual person. I'm going to be happy now. Yeah? So you come to the Abbey, and I'm going to be happy. And then they ask you to wash the dishes and vacuum and work in the forest and sit up straight and keep your palms flat together like this, not like this. And you got to follow this schedule. Who in the world made this schedule? I don't like it. And you can't eat whatever you like. You got to eat what they serve. And some of it's good, but some of it, yeah. And they have a huge supply of the kind of snacks I don't like, and a very meager supply of the kind of snacks that I adore. Where's the happiness I was supposed to experience at this monastery? I'm going running down that road, going back to Newport. Yeah, take the shuttle to Spokane, get out of here as fast as I can. But on the way, I'm stopping at Starbucks so I can have some coffee, because this place, this Abbey, doesn't let you have coffee. Isn't that horrible? And I'm going to stop at the steakhouse too, because they don't serve meat. And then I'm going to go to 31 Flavors. Because sometimes they have ice cream at the Abbey, but it's not the flavor I like. And besides, they put it out on the table when they put the main meal out. So by the time you get to the ice cream, either everybody else ate it before you, or it has become soup. Okay, so it sounds like we could make a song out of it. I'm running down the hill to Spring Valley Road, getting to the Newport shuttle. I'll leave it to you to fill in the rest of it, okay, with everything you're going to enjoy as you do that. Okay. So this view that we have, how life should center around us, and we're entitled to all happiness. This view is limited in many ways. Limited? What is he talking about? Yeah. One is that it takes only ourselves into account. We primarily think about what I want, what makes me happy. Well, what's wrong with that? I am the center of the universe, after all. The next sentence says, while there are over 7 billion human beings on the planet, we care principally about only one. Since everyone sees the world this way, that's why everybody else is wrong, because they don't realize that I'm the center of the universe. They think they are. Okay, so since everyone sees the world this way, we are left to quarrel about who really is the most important. We all know who that is. Yeah. He tweeted us multiple times every day for 4 years. But actually, he's wrong. I'm the most important one, not him. So disputes from family arguments to international wars result from this limited view. Another drawback is that it assumes only this life exists in the way that everything appears now. But a little reflection will show us that who we are is in fact fluid. So try this simple exercise. Ask yourself, am I the same person I was when I was 1 month old? Yeah, we say when I was an infant, this and such happened to me. Or this was my blankie when I was a baby. Okay, so that I, is it the same as the I we have now? Are we the same person as when we were a month old? Our present body and mind are completely different. We are not exactly the same person as the infant in our baby pictures. Although sometimes we look like it, don't we? When we throw a temper tantrum, we look an awful lot like that baby picture. My parents recorded that on a video, not of the baby having the temper tantrum. I think I was about 4 years old, and I was frustrated because I could not get my skates to stay on, because in those days you had skates that had a hook that had to hook on your shoes. They didn't have skates where you put your whole foot into the boot that was attached to the rollers. And I couldn't get the skates to stay on, and I was so frustrated. And I stamped my feet, and I cried, and I threw the skates down, and the whole time my dad is filming it. So, yeah. So sometimes we think we're past childhood, and we aren't. Yeah. Okay, so our present mind are completely different, body and mind are completely different. We are not exactly the same person as the infant in our baby pictures. Nevertheless, there is a continuum that connects the baby to the adult we are now. Similarly, there is a continuum that goes on after we die. So we don't just die and then there's nothingness. What we call I or me exists by being merely designated independence on a body and mind. While our body is physical and its continuity can be traced back to the sperm and egg of our parents, we also have a mind, the cognitive, perceptive, emotional part of ourselves that is not material in nature. Okay, our body is material in nature, the mind is not. Do not confuse the mind with the brain. Okay, the brain is part of the body, it's material in nature. Yeah, the mind is not the brain. It is not made of atoms and molecules. Okay, so what experiences, feelings, sensations, and so on, it's actually the mind that experiences happiness and pain, pleasure and unpleasure, displeasure. Okay. So our mind, the cognitive, perceptive, emotional part of ourselves that is not materia. If we trace back the continuity of our mind, each moment of mind being preceded by a previous moment of mind, we reach the moment of conception. Our mind at this point, at this time too, had a cause, the preceding moment before taking place in the combination of the sperm and egg. Okay, so at conception, the sperm and egg were coming together, and then the consciousness enters that. Okay. It's not quite sure from the Buddhist perspective exactly when the consciousness ends. Is it before the fertilized ovum is implanted in the side of the womb, or is it after? We don't know. In the case of in vitro fertilization, when the consciousness joins the fertilized ovum, nobody's been able to say for sure so far. I think you need supernormal powers to know that kind of thing. Okay, so in this way, the continuity of mind can be traced back to before this life, the mind in previous lives. Although our body and mind and self were different in our previous life, there is the continuity of the mind. So there's a continuity of the body from day to day. There's the continuity of the mind or consciousness from day to day, too. Yeah, just as the body changes from day to day, although there's a continuum, the mind changes from day to day, although there's a continuum. So going back from one moment of consciousness to the previous moment, from one lifetime to another, we see that we have been born into many different bodies in what we call cyclic existence or samsara. Cyclic existence refers to taking a body and mind under the control of ignorance, mental afflictions, and karma. Cyclic existence is not our environment. Okay? It's a state of our body and mind, particularly a state of mind. So there is a saying, be careful what you want because you might get it. In our case, at the time of death of one life, we want another body, and we got it. Okay? Why does our mind seek to be born in a body at the time of death? Because having a body makes us feel real. Look, there's a body. This separates me out as a unique individual. On the basis of our body, we create many identities that we cling to, without which we would feel lost. So just think about the number of identities that we create based on this body. Okay? An identity of how old we are, which is going to change over time. An identity of race and what that entails. An identity of health or infirmity, what that entails. Yeah. The identity of gender, whether you're male or female or non-binary or one of the other letters that I can't always remember, And so many things, identities are based on our body, whether I'm athletic or not. Yeah. So many things. And so we create those identities and then we grasp onto them as this is who I really am. Okay. What makes our mind take one rebirth after the next? The fundamental cause is ignorance, a mental factor that misapprehends how phenomena exist. Once we grasp a real me and think that our body and mind exist objectively and independent of everything else, then other mental afflictions arise. So attachment to what gives us pleasure, anger at what interferes with our happiness or brings us pain. We become jealous of those who have what we don't have, arrogant regarding those who we think aren't as good as we are, and competitive with equals. Yeah, you recognize all these things in your life? Yeah, they're all there. And they all originate with this grasping at a wrong idea of the self. Due to grasping a real me, we create identities based on our body. I am this race, this ethnic group, this nationality, this gender, this sexual orientation, this age, this degree of sexiness, this degree of physical strength and athletic ability, and on and on and on. Okay. We also create identities based on our mind. I am talented. I am stupid. I am creative, articulate, emotional, and uneducated. No, I just want the I am creative and articulate part. The emotional and uneducated part, I don't want. Okay. But we create identities about all of those. Clinging to these identities, we react with attachment or anger toward what confirms or threatens them. Yeah? So when other people treat us according to how we think people with our identity should be treated, yeah, then if we think our identity is a good one and people treat us accordingly, we're happy. But if we think that our identity is a negative one, that for whatever reason we don't have the same social clout as somebody else or whatever it is, then we get angry when people treat us according to our caste or our social position. Okay. So we're always reacting to things. And if we think we have a certain caste and we think it's a dominant caste, then people should treat us according to that. If they don't, then we have to correct them and put them in their place. If we think that we're from a minority caste or a caste that is lower, which in some countries could even be the majority of people, yeah, and people treat us according to that. Some people might just accept it and say, well, this is who I am. Other people may say, oh, you're treating me like I'm part of the lower caste, but that's not fair. And then they get angry. Okay, so we're always having this idea of how people should treat us and then evaluating how they treat us according to that. You know, if in your job you have a high position, then people should respect you like that. Yeah. If you were raised that the man is the head of the family, then in your family, everybody should, defer to what daddy wants. Okay. In other cultures, it's very interesting. Actually, the women run the families, but the men think they do. Okay. So the culture is such that is very patriarchal, but the women know how to rule. Okay. And they find their way. So, we're always trying to figure out where we stand. Are people treating us accordingly to that? And do we like that, the way they treat us? So motivated by these afflictive mental states, we then act. So we have the ignorance, then there's another mental factor in there that exaggerates the desirability or the undesirability of something, and then with an emotion that's going to come, and then an action that ensues. So motivated by these afflictive mental states, we then act. And this is the meaning of to create karma. So karma simply means action. It's not something mystical. Sometimes we connive how to get what we want. Other times we speak in inconsiderate ways. In other situations, we may steal others' possessions or use our sexuality in ways that harm others or ourselves. These actions leave on our mind stream, the continuity of our consciousness, a residue which may be called karmic seeds. Okay. Many different karmic seeds are planted on our mind stream in just one day, depending on the various intentions we have and actions we do. Depending upon which karmic seeds ripen at the time we die, our mind stream will be attracted to one or another type of body, and we are reborn. So that's how we got here, not by the stork. Sometimes we have kind intentions and act according to them, but because the fundamental ignorance is still present, these actions still bring rebirth and cyclic existence. These actions will influence the type of rebirth we take, so what we're reborn as, okay, where we're reborn, our experiences in life, and they affect our habitual thought patterns and our habitual actions as well. Let's just see here. Trying to find a good place to stop. I guess let's stop right here because time is up. Okay. So lots to think about here, really try and see your life as, or try and see what we talked about this morning as an explanation of your life. Yeah. Readjust how you see yourself.